Welcome to Lesson 7, Make Responsible Repertoire Choices. In this lesson, let's talk about making repertoire choices from an informed place so that we can avoid performative diversity. Now, you remember from our very first lesson that culturally responsive teaching in the music context is not about simply diversifying your repertoire. It's about the instructional decision making that teachers can make because they are teaching through the cultural frames of reference of their students. In music, I define culturally responsive music education as leveraging the prior knowledge, experiences, and interests of our young musicians so that we can work in partnership with them to engage in relevant musical tasks that help them construct understanding about themselves, about others, and the world around them. Now, if we're going to help our students to construct those understandings about themselves, others, and the world around them, then we've got to use repertoire and content that will help us to be able to do that. And when we're making those choices, it's important that they are diverse. We've got to remember the beautiful plethora of musicians and composers and genres that are available to us. The better we can make sure that we are centering diversity in our choices, the better our students will be able to construct those understandings about themselves and others in the world, because music becomes the vehicle for them to have those learnings take place. And we want to make sure that we are not engaging in what I call performative diversity in our repertoire choices. Performative diversity happens when you only choose a piece of music based on a single identity of the composer or the cultural group from which that music comes. That could look like you come across a beautiful piece of music and it's composed by a Black composer, and you say, great, let me put this on my program. But you haven't done any work to understand, well, who is that composer? What motivated them to create this piece? What's their background? Without doing that kind of work, simply choosing a piece of repertoire based on one part of somebody's identity, that's performative diversity. We want to avoid that. Instead, at a minimum, you need to know these things about every piece of repertoire that you introduce to your students. Yes, I said every single piece of repertoire. You need to know who, what, when, where, why, and how. Who created this piece of music? And not just their name, not just the name of the cultural group if it's a folk song and not composed by any one particular person, but understand the background of the composer, understand the past and the present of the culture from which it comes. You need to know what. What is the purpose of this piece of music? You need to know where. Where in the world was this piece of music created? That's going to influence the decisions that you make about it. You need to know when. What time period was this piece of music created in? You need to know how. How was this piece of music created? How is it supposed to be performed? And then you'll need to know why. Not just the purpose of the piece of music, that's the what, but why was this piece of music created? Understanding these points at a minimum about every piece of repertoire that you introduce to your young musicians better allows you to avoid the performative repertoire choices of somebody who's just picking because of a single identity of the composer or of the culture from which it comes. It also better positions you to be able to engage your learners in deeper conversations and deeper connections about the repertoire because you actually understand where the repertoire comes from, the purpose, the people behind it, and so on and so forth. Let's make sure that we are making informed repertoire choices every time we pick music so that we can avoid performative diversity. And that's it for Lesson 7. And here's your reflection for today. What is one action item you will take to ensure you are not engaging in performative diversity when it comes to repertoire choices in your music program? Take a moment to think about that and then drop your thoughts and reflections in the comments section below this video. And I'll see you next time for Lesson 8. Don't forget to let your music teacher friends know about this series so they can get in on this learning too.